When I say disabled, what comes to mind first? You may think of someone in a wheelchair or an amputee, something that you can see right off the bat from their appearance. But what if I told you I was disabled? You can't tell from looking at me, can you? That's because I'm neurodivergent, which means I have an invisible disability. For those who don't know, being neurodivergent essentially means your brain doesn't process things in the same way to others. It's expressed in many ways, including autism, ADHD, OCD, and much, much more. I have sensory processing disorder and what I like to call half-diagnosed dyslexia. I'll explain. Growing up, I was seemingly a normal child. Then I started year one, and the challenges arose. This is me with the first book that I brought home from school. You can't tell from the outside, but I was struggling to tell the difference between letters like B and D, and the spaces between words could disappear as I read. Similar to this. When I was younger, I thought this was normal. I didn't know that other kids were not struggling with it, and so I kept it to myself. Later on, however, I realized this is not the case, and came to the conclusion that I probably had dyslexia. But due to the stigma of all this, I didn't know where to go for help. I'd grown up not seeing anyone like myself and thinking that if others knew, they, 1, wouldn't believe me, or 2, would see me as a completely different person. You see, the fact that my disability is invisible means that I felt pushed into the shadows. Because what if I was making it up? What if I was just doing it for attention? Others could only see the achieving student who was just a slow reader. They couldn't see the confusion I hid when the words moved or the spaces disappeared, or the fear that grew inside when we had to read as a group. I knew that I needed to get support before I started NCA, so after finally telling my parents, we got help from my school. Weeks of tests went by, and then my learning support teacher told me that I had dyslexia. From that moment, a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. This diagnosis gave me access to special assessment conditions, so I had reader-writers and separate accommodation, which has helped a lot. But as with everything, it seems, there is a catch. This diagnosis only gets me so far. To get the same level of help that I would need at university, I would have to have a clinical psychologist diagnose me. And from here, it gets trickier. We were told that for a formal diagnosis, it would cost up to $1,300 and have a wait time of at least 3 months. But we already knew that I had dyslexia, so why should we have to pay a lot of money and wait a long time simply to gain access to the support that I needed? It didn't sit right with me. We decided not to go for it, mostly because of the high cost, but also because I'm stubborn and wanted to make a point. So I learned to love my brain. It grants me a unique lens through which I view our world, which is something I take a lot of pride in. However, my experiences demanded me to look for a solution. You see, in my eyes, you can't complain about something unless you've tried to make a difference. So I looked, and looked, and looked. But not many people are aware of this challenge that so many people face. As time went on, I heard other people's struggles. They faced the same barriers as me, long wait times and high costs. I soon found out that the average cost for an autism assessment is $2,000, and for ADHD, it ranges from $1,500 to $3,000. Yep, that's the equivalent of 600 pizzas, or 150 hours working at minimum wage. I'll let that sink in. So, other than the cost and time, why is it so hard to get diagnosed? There are many factors that make this whole experience more confusing. Firstly, there's the stigma. Currently, when talking about being neurodivergent, people have misconceptions around what this means. This leads to neurodivergent people facing backlash for seeking help. I've had a teacher tell me that I don't need reader-writers, and a doctor say we're all a little bit autistic, which is simply incorrect. Stigma also leads to a lack of education around these disabilities. This means that people don't know the traits that ND people have in order to spot them in themselves or their family members. Neurodiversity is also expressed very differently depending on the individual. This means that diagnosis assessments need to be tailored to each person. Another factor that makes diagnosis harder is how these disabilities have been researched in the past. Previously, research focused on young white boys, and the traits of neurodiversity varies a lot between the age and sex of individuals. Finally, there is masking. Many neurodivergent people have grown the ability to mimic mannerisms of neurotypicals without realizing it in order to blend in. An example of this is forcing eye contact. For some ND people, eye contact is exhausting and uncomfortable. Masking in ways like this means that it can take a long time before anybody notices that their brain functions differently. So, what can you do? For starters, and I sincerely hope this is obvious, if someone tells you they're neurodivergent, listen to them, rather than shutting them down. Next, if you're doing research on these disabilities, seek information from people who are neurodivergent. Trust me, they know what they're talking about. There are plenty of people online who share their experiences, so look for that. These are some of my favourite accounts. Next, if you want to make change, then I've started a petition for more funding to be made available and have set up a template to send to your local MP and the Minister for Disability Issues. If you're interested in these resources, you can come to me during the break. By taking these actions into account, we have the power to determine how inclusive our society is to thousands of neurodivergent people. My name is Saoirse. I'm queer, I'm an activist, and I am disabled. Thank you.